Growing up, I was always the quieter, more reserved sibling, while my younger brother, Ryan, was the center of attention in our family. Our mother, who doted on him, made him the golden child. She cooked his meals, did his laundry, and even asked me to help him with his schoolwork. I was expected to help Ryan simply because we were family, but I never received the same support in return. It was something I came to accept early on, being the independent kid who didn't mind handling things myself. But as I got older, I started to notice the disparity in how we were treated. My mother's favoritism toward Ryan was undeniable, and despite me being an introverted kid focused on my studies, I never complained. That all changed, though, when Ryan began bullying me. Ryan's actions ranged from verbal taunts to physical intimidation. He constantly mocked me for being different, teasing me about my height and my glasses. His teasing grew more malicious as we got older. He would sneak into my room, read my private diary, and then report back to our mother, turning my personal thoughts into fodder for his amusement. Whenever I confronted him, my parents would dismiss it, saying it was no big deal or that brothers should bond through these petty squabbles. Things escalated when Ryan went as far as damaging my belongings. He broke my glasses once and even put little stones in my cereal. The fact that no one took these acts seriously hurt, and my mother continued to downplay the seriousness of his actions. What stung the most, though, was how Ryan would mock me about the bullying I faced at school. We attended the same school, and instead of defending me or offering comfort, he sided with the bullies. He even went so far as to call me names like loser and ugly, while encouraging the other kids to push me around. His words were a punch to the gut, especially when he cruelly told me to kill myself during a fight when I was struggling with my mental health. That remark stayed with me for years. Despite all this, my mother never saw Ryan's behavior as problematic, brushing off my complaints and even blaming me for irritating him. It was clear that she saw him as the better child. Our father, often absent due to work, didn't notice the full extent of Ryan's bullying until much later. I spent years enduring Ryan's relentless mocking, never expecting things to change. But everything shifted when Ryan tried to set my hair on fire one day. That was the tipping point. My father finally took a stand, warning Ryan that if he didn't stop, there would be serious consequences. It was the first time Ryan faced any real consequences for his actions, and he was stunned. My father made it clear that this behavior could no longer be tolerated. Although it took years for my father to recognize the toxic dynamic between Ryan and me, that moment marked the beginning of my struggle to finally stand up for myself. After leaving for university, I hoped to finally escape the toxic environment that had dominated my childhood. I was free to pursue my studies without the constant barrage of insults from Ryan. It was during this time that I met Laura at a party through a friend. She was different, kind, attentive, and genuinely interested in me. We connected instantly, and for the first time in a long while, I felt seen and understood. Coming from a religious background, I had always believed in the sanctity of marriage. So, when Laura found out she was pregnant just before we graduated, we decided to marry right away. It was a small, intimate ceremony, but it was one of the happiest days of my life. Our family supported us, and I felt like I was building something solid with Laura. But beneath the surface of what appeared to be a perfect marriage, things were slowly unraveling. At first, it was small things, occasional arguments, misunderstandings. I convinced myself it was just the usual struggles that come with adjusting to married life. But as time went on, I began to notice more concerning signs. Laura, the woman I thought was my soulmate, was distant. Her mood swings became more frequent, and she was increasingly unavailable when I needed her. I chalked it up to stress, the pressures of being newly married, and adjusting to adulthood. However, the truth came crashing down when I discovered that Laura had been unfaithful. I first found out about her affair with a married co-worker. It turned out to have been going on for years, a secret that had been hidden in plain sight. At the time, I tried to rationalize it, telling myself that it was just a mistake, something that happened during a youthful, carefree phase of our relationship. But the second betrayal hit me much harder. During a visit to her family, Laura slept with her ex-boyfriend, a fling she had never mentioned before. I was devastated. The trust I had built with her had shattered in an instant. Despite everything, I chose to forgive her. I didn't want to raise our child in a broken home, and I believed that with time we could work through this. But deep down, I knew that things could never be the same. I had already begun to lose my faith in her. Still, I kept pushing forward, hoping that things would improve. But as I would later find out, the worst was yet to come. It wasn't just the betrayal that tore me apart. It was the fact that Laura had been hiding something far darker from me, something that would shake me to my core. The moment Laura confessed to me that she had been having an affair with Ryan, my world turned upside down. I couldn't comprehend what she was saying at first. It felt like a cruel joke. How could my wife, the woman I had trusted with everything, have slept with my own brother? I couldn't process the betrayal. It wasn't just the affair itself. It was the fact that Ryan, the very person who had tormented me my whole life, was now involved in the most intimate betrayal imaginable. I had always believed that my relationship with Laura was solid, that we had a strong foundation built on love and trust. But now, I was left questioning everything. Laura's confession was cold, almost detached. She explained that the affair with Ryan had started when she and I introduced her to my family. At first, Ryan had been polite and kind toward her, something I never expected, given how he usually treated me. Laura spent a lot of time with my mother, and as the months passed, Ryan and she had grown closer. She claimed that they started out as friends, but one thing led to another, and their relationship escalated into an affair. I had never imagined that something so horrific could happen, especially between two people I loved and trusted. When she told me about the pregnancy, everything became even more complicated. She didn't know for sure if the child was mine or Ryan's. The uncertainty, the doubt, was more painful than I could describe. I had raised our son with so much love and care, only to now be confronted with the possibility that I might not even be his biological father. Laura's attempt to justify her actions, saying she made a mistake, that it wasn't planned, felt empty. The gravity of the situation left me numb. I didn't know how to react. Should I stay in this marriage for the sake of the child? Should I walk away from everything I had known? After days of agonizing over it, I decided I couldn't stay with Laura. The trust was gone, and the emotional wounds were too deep. I calmly told her that I was leaving. She begged me to stay, crying and pleading, telling me that mistakes happen in every marriage, and that we could work through it. But I had no more patience. I had given her a second chance once before, and now I was done. There was no coming back from this betrayal. I packed my things quietly, with no anger, just a quiet resolve to move on. I didn't immediately go to my parents. I needed time to process everything on my own, but when I finally did speak to them, I made it clear what had happened. I told them about the affair with Ryan and how everything had fallen apart. To my surprise, my father was furious, and my mother, for the first time, seemed to truly understand the gravity of what had happened. But for me, the damage had already been done. The family I had hoped to build with Laura was gone. The one person I had trusted more than anyone else had destroyed it all. As the dust settled from the revelation of Laura's affair, my life began to feel like it was spinning out of control. I had just come to terms with the collapse of my marriage when something unexpected occurred. My father, who had always been supportive of me, called me one afternoon with shocking news. He had decided to update his will, and as part of that update, he was cutting Ryan out completely. This was an enormous decision, considering the family's history, but my father made it clear that he no longer wanted anything to do with my brother. Ryan's actions, particularly his betrayal of our family and the affair with Laura, had left an indelible mark on my father's trust. At first, I couldn't quite grasp what my father was saying. The weight of his words hit me only after I processed everything. My father, a man who had been unwaveringly loyal to his children and his family, had finally reached his breaking point. He told me that everything he had worked for, including his retirement fund and life insurance, which amounted to nearly $2 million, would be left to me. Ryan, who had always been the favored child, would be left with nothing. My father's reasoning was simple. He could no longer reward a son who had not only betrayed his brother, but had also shattered the very foundation of their family. The cutoff wasn't just financial. It was a symbolic decision that represented the end of any future connection with Ryan. The impact of this decision was profound. It felt almost surreal to hear that my brother, who had once been the center of our family, was now the outcast. Despite everything Ryan had done, I didn't relish the idea of him being cut off. But I couldn't deny the sense of relief that came with knowing I was no longer the only one bearing the consequences of his actions. As for my mother, she struggled with the decision. She always saw Ryan as her baby, the one she had always tried to protect. When she learned that my father had cut Ryan out of the will, she was devastated. She tried to defend him, claiming that he was a lost soul who just needed some guidance. But my father was resolute. He had given Ryan enough chances. A few days after the will update, Ryan came to me, desperate. He had heard about the change and wanted to reconcile. He explained how things had gone wrong for him. He claimed that he was struggling with college, couldn't find a part-time job, and was now being harassed by Laura for child support. His life was falling apart, and he wanted me to help him fix it. He begged for a fresh start, asking me to talk to our parents, to intervene, to somehow make everything right again. I couldn't help but laugh. The audacity of Ryan, after everything he had done, to call me up and beg for help. I reminded him that he should have thought of the consequences before sleeping with my wife and getting her pregnant. His problems, financial or emotional, were his own to deal with. I had no sympathy left for him. As far as I was concerned, we were done. I made it clear that I would not be involving myself in his mess. I reminded him that he was no longer the favored child, but rather the black sheep of the family. Ryan tried to defend himself, accusing me of being unfair. He blamed Karen for everything, claiming that she was just as responsible for the affair as he was. I agreed, but I reminded him that I had already divorced her. She was no longer my problem. His attempts to shift blame fell on deaf ears. When he began to cry, pleading for me to reconsider, it only further confirmed that he had learned nothing. I felt a brief moment of pity, but it quickly faded as I reaffirmed that I was done with him. I no longer considered him my brother. Since that conversation, I've thought a lot about what happened, about how quickly everything unraveled. But I know now that there is no turning back. My father's decision to cut Ryan off was final, and so was mine. The family I once knew, the one I had tried so hard to protect and hold together, was gone. But as painful as that truth was, it also gave me a strange sense of peace. For the first time, I wasn't the one holding everything together. I was free from the burden of carrying Ryan's mistakes. In the aftermath of the family fallout and the divorce, I found myself standing on my own for the first time in a long while. The weight of everything that had happened, the betrayal by both Laura and Ryan, the deep wounds of family rejection, and the emotional toll of it all, left me feeling drained. But as time passed, I slowly began to heal, finding strength in my own independence. I moved into a bachelor apartment, something I hadn't had the chance to experience before since I had married so young. The first few weeks were difficult, adjusting to a life I had never anticipated, but there was also a strange sense of liberation. For the first time, I didn't have to worry about what anyone else thought. I was free to be myself without the constant judgment, manipulation, or betrayal from the people I once trusted most. I focused on my career and my personal growth, something I had neglected for so many years. The promotion at work came just a few months after my divorce was finalized. It was a recognition of my hard work, but more importantly, it was a sign that I could still build something for myself despite everything that had happened. I poured myself into my job, rediscovered my hobbies, and even began taking better care of myself physically. I had been through so much emotionally, and it felt like the time to reclaim my life had finally arrived. As the months passed, my relationship with my parents began to improve. My father, who had initially been stoic and distant after everything with Ryan, began to warm up to me again. We started spending more time together, going golfing on weekends and talking about everything from life to work. It was a strange feeling, finally having my father's support in the way I had always needed. Though my mother still missed Ryan, she too began to come to terms with the reality of his actions. She respected my decision, even though she struggled to let go of the idea that Ryan could be redeemed. Still, she didn't question my choices anymore, and that was enough for me. The healing process wasn't just about moving away from the toxicity of my past, but also about building something new. I was no longer tied to a family dynamic that had kept me in a constant state of emotional turmoil. I had learned to stand up for myself, to refuse to tolerate disrespect, and to set boundaries where they had never existed before. Though I had made peace with the divorce and the fallout with Ryan, there were still moments of doubt. Was I being too harsh? Should I have tried to help Ryan when he reached out for support? But whenever I revisited the pain they had caused me, the answer became clear. No matter how much time had passed, the betrayal still stung. And as much as I hated it, I realized that I could never go back to the person I had been before all of this happened. In therapy, I began to process the lingering effects of everything that had transpired. The emotional scars from Ryan's bullying, the pain of Laura's betrayal, and the complicated relationship with my parents had all left their mark. But over time, I began to understand that healing wasn't about erasing the past. It was about accepting it, learning from it, and moving forward. I wasn't the same person I was before all of this, and maybe that was okay. Perhaps, in some strange way, it was for the better. I hadn't started dating again, partly because I felt like I needed time to rediscover who I was outside of the roles I'd been playing in my marriage and family. I wasn't ready to open myself up to someone new, but I knew that, eventually, I would be. For now, I was content to focus on myself and my own happiness, something I hadn't done in years. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I was hopeful about what lay ahead. I had learned that, no matter how painful the past had been, I had the strength to keep moving forward, and that, in itself, was enough. It's been several months since I made the decision to cut ties with Ryan and finalize my divorce from Laura. Life has changed in ways I never could have predicted, but as I reflect on everything that has happened, I can honestly say I'm doing better now. The initial shock of the betrayals and the emotional turmoil that followed have slowly faded into the background, though I'll never forget the pain that came with them. I've learned to accept that some things in life are beyond my control, but how I respond to them is something I can always choose. The relationship with my parents has significantly improved. My father and I have grown closer, spending weekends golfing and talking about our lives. For the first time in years, I feel like we're on the same page, like I have his full support, and he's genuinely proud of me. It's a strange and satisfying feeling, considering the years of tension and emotional distance that plagued our relationship when I was growing up. My mother, on the other hand, has stayed somewhat distant from me regarding Ryan, but she has stopped questioning my choices. She still misses him, but I no longer feel the need to convince her that I was right in cutting him off. That part of my life is over, and I've learned to let go of the things I cannot change. My career has continued to progress. A few months ago, I received a promotion at work that not only boosted my salary, but also validated my efforts and growth over the past year. Work has become a source of stability and pride for me. It's where I can channel my energy, and it gives me a sense of purpose. I've also been taking better care of myself physically. I started working out regularly and eating healthier, which has made a noticeable difference in my overall well-being. In many ways, my physical health has mirrored my emotional recovery. Slow, steady progress that adds up over time. As for relationships, I haven't jumped back into the dating scene. I'm still healing and figuring out who I am outside of the roles I played in my marriage and family. It's strange to think that I spent so many years focused on others, on pleasing my parents, on fixing my marriage, on dealing with Ryan that I never truly thought about myself. Now, for the first time, I'm focusing on my own needs and desires. I don't know when I'll be ready to date again, but I'm in no rush. For now, I'm enjoying my independence, and I'm learning to enjoy my own company. The truth is, despite everything I've been through, I've come out stronger. I've built a life for myself that doesn't revolve around the toxic people from my past. It's not perfect, but it's mine. I've learned to set boundaries, to walk away from relationships that no longer serve me, and to value my own peace over familial expectations or societal norms. As for Ryan and Laura, I don't keep tabs on them. I've heard through distant family members that they're living together and raising the child. Ryan is working a part-time job as a mechanic, struggling to make ends meet. As for Karen, she continues to reach out occasionally, but I have no interest in rekindling any form of communication with her. I've closed that chapter of my life. The son I raised, thinking he was my own, now seems like a distant memory. At this point, I've learned to embrace the idea of living life on my terms. The past will always be part of who I am, but it doesn't define me anymore. I'm in a place where I can finally focus on what makes me happy, and the journey of rediscovering myself continues. Life is unpredictable, and I'm learning to take it one day at a time. For once, I feel like I'm in control. The future feels uncertain, but it also feels full of potential, and that's a good place to be.